Where else would you rather be? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association. Welcome to the people of Penn State. Each week on the podcast, you can expect to hear the voices of Penn Staters talking about what they're passionate about, and you can expect to feel the pride and the power of the Penn State network. Today, we're talking with Joe Moskowitz. He is the industry principal at Dealpath. He has been a champion of technology adoption in commercial real estate. He's been involved with educating end users on the value of innovative SaaS platforms as they relate to leasing, asset management, and investment management. With over a decade of industry experience, Joe has held leadership roles at renowned institutions such as JP Morgan Chase, focusing on data governance as it pertains to real estate assets, and VTS, which is the industry's premier leasing and asset management platform. Joe is also currently the vice chairperson of the board for OSCRE, a nonprofit consortium of industry-leading organizations focused on data standards and sustainability and within the built environment. You might know Joe, though, because recently in June of 2023, he and his fiancé competed in the 35th season of The Amazing Race. Joe and his fiancée, Ian, reside in New York City, and they split their time between Chelsea and East Hampton, New York. Welcome to the people of Penn State, Joe Moskowitz.
Hey, Paul. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Joe, thanks for joining us. Let's start right at the beginning of your Penn State journey. How did you become a Nittany Lion?
Well, I grew up in Rockland County, New York. It's a suburb of New York City. So I always knew I wanted to go to a school somewhere in the Northeast where I could be far enough away from my family, but, still close enough that I can hop in a car and drive there. I wanted a school with a great reputation, a good sports program, and that's sort of like quintessential college experience that I had in my mind, which was a big, beautiful campus and, sort of like a melting pot of different cultures and people from all over the world, right? I wanted to end up at a school that had that global pull to bring all of those diverse minds together. So Penn State was the clear choice for that.
So you come to Penn State. As a student, what were you involved in here?
Yeah, so I got to Penn State in 2006. I quickly started to get involved in intramural sports, and I got involved in Greek life as well. So I went around and spent some time at all the different fraternity houses, ending up at the house that I ultimately joined, which was SIGEP, Sigma Phi Epsilon. And then, upon joining that house, that opened up a lot of other doors for me to get involved in the things that the fraternity was getting involved in, namely Thon, right? Obviously, one of the largest student-run philanthropies in the world. And to be able to get involved in that was just, something that not a lot of people get to do. And it's very special to Penn Staters.
Absolutely. So when you came to Penn State, what was your initial area of study? What did you major in? And what was like your career goals coming into Penn State?
Yeah, I had my sights set on SMEAL, on the business school. I didn't really know in what capacity. I just knew that I wanted to focus on the business side of things. And so I started to take all of the, entrance to major classes for business management or marketing or, something within SMEAL. And as I was, working through that, I started to think a little bit more about, what interests me, what strengths that I have, and how that can be applied to what I was studying at the university. And so I would say probably a year in, I started to explore what the hospitality program had to offer, met with a bunch of people over there, and, was really, it really piqued my interest, just like the people forward nature of that program, while also still weaving in all of the business aspects of what I was searching for in SMEAL. And so combining those two things is what really interested me. And so ultimately ended up in the health and human development, namely hotel, restaurant, and institutional management program.
So it's interesting. You look at your resume, and I was thinking it's either SMEAL or it's IST, right? Because of the work you've done in technology. So surprising change. How did that then launch your career after Penn State?
Yeah. So when I was in the hospitality program, what I found was a lot of the curriculum at that time was focused on operations, right? Were you going to work in a restaurant and manage a chain of restaurants? Were you going to ultimately work, within the walls of a hotel property or manage a chain of hotels or, go work for Marriott, whatever it may be? That was never actually my interest. As I mentioned, I was focused on SMEAL initially. So I was kind of thinking about what are the non-traditional things that I can focus on within HRIM. And I remember spending a lot of time with John O'Neill, who was a professor doing a real estate course within the program. And that was fascinating to me. He was also doing appraisals. He was an appraiser as well as a professor. So I spent a lot of time with him, and I sort of learned the ropes of what goes into doing appraisals for hotel properties and how value is attributed to the physical asset, to the operation, to the brand, to the food and beverage program. And so I worked with him, and I actually worked with the Penn State Alumni Network and reached out to a lot of people who were also in similar professional capacities, and ended up being a hotel appraiser. That was my first job out of college in New York City. Started working on hotel appraisals. So it was very, very in line and applicable to exactly what I was studying and what I was focused on while at Penn State in my latter 2 years.
That hospitality management department is fantastic at engaging alumni and bringing alumni back to work with students. Literally hundreds of alumni come back and either speak in the classroom or come to their career days. It's a great connection. Look, a lot of people decide to come to Penn State because of the power of the Penn State network, and there aren't too many who do it better than hospitality management. Yeah,
no, exactly. Hospitality management folks are people forward, and that's what intrigued me at the beginning of that. And it's so true now in my professional network. Fast forward to today, I was actually just talking to a buddy of mine who was also a Penn Stater, and we were kind of laughing at the fact that he loves making connections. Everyone has LinkedIn connections that we may not exactly be that close to, and so he was like, yeah, someone asked me if I knew this guy. I didn't really know him, but he goes to Penn State, so I know that he's going to answer my call. So now I can introduce this guy to this guy and make that connection. And that right there is the absolute power of the alumni network, right? Is call upon another Penn Stater and they're going to answer that call, just to talk to you because of that connection. So that's really, really powerful, especially with how many folks there are out in the industry.
Joe, you are the industry principal at Dealpath. Tell us a little bit about your company and the work that you do day to day.
Sure. So yeah, Dealpath is a commercial real estate deal management platform. And so we work with a lot of the largest institutional investment management firms like Blackstone, the life insurance companies, a lot of REITs, to provide automation and efficiency and collaboration to their investments in real estate portfolios. And so my role at the tech platform is pretty much managing our relationship with the industry. And so I go to various conferences and I speak on panels. So I do a bit of thought leadership. I represent Dealpath in a lot of various industry organizations and make sure that, the Dealpath value proposition and messaging is being portrayed properly to the market, to key stakeholders who could then, influence Dealpath's growth within the commercial real estate industry. And so that's sort of what I'm focused on there. I do a bit of strategic partnerships. So working with other tech platforms to exchange data on behalf of mutual clients. So again, a really, people forward sort of role within that combination of technology and commercial real estate.
This is the People of Penn State. I'm Paul Clifford. I'm joined today by Joe Moskowitz. He's the industry principal at Dealpath and the Amazing Race competitor on season 35. That's what I want to dive into next. So the Amazing Race, right? Everybody has, if they're not watching it religiously, are familiar with the concept. How long had you been a fan before you applied?
Oh, forever. I was a fan forever. My fiancé Ian was a fan forever. And then we actually moved in together the week that New York City went into lockdown for COVID. And so that was a time when everyone was like, okay, well, we're not going to the office. We're stuck at home. What are we going to watch? And so we quickly realized that we were both lifelong fans of the show. And so we decided to rewatch all of the Amazing Race seasons and also all of the Survivor seasons. So that, being 30, when we started that 32, 33 seasons of the Amazing Race and 40 some odd seasons of Survivor, it took a lot of our time. But we quickly found that we started to strategize when we were watching. And I started to take notes on my phone of, which challenge would we do or who would be good at, doing what they're doing now on the race. And so we started to build up this pretty big strategic note just for fun. And then also we're huge adventure travelers. So all of our vacations and leisure travel is to obscure remote places, which by the way, makes it really difficult to get some other friends to join us on trips.
Sure.
So you take that component and just being lifelong fans of the show, we thought to ourselves, let's put a video together. Let's do some research and see even what it takes to apply to the show. And so we did. We applied one time and ended up getting a phone call from it.
And so from that phone call, where did it then lead?
Yeah, we put the video together. It started out kind of like not that real. This is like a fun kind of joke thing to do. But then when we saw the final video before we even submitted it, we were like, wow, this hits the mark. This really portrays who we are and kind of like shows the world who we are and what we're about. And so we felt pretty good. And when we submitted it, we got a phone call. I think it was just one day later. And then that kicked off a long series of the application process, filling out forms, doing a lot of different interviews over Zoom with folks in LA, working with casting producers, the executive producers of the show's creators, Elise and Bertram. And so we had a lot of conversations. We had to do, things that you would expect, like, psych evaluations and medical and like make sure everything is in order. And then, it was a long and arduous process. It was a second full-time job, right? We would be working all day and then we'd come home and spend a couple hours working on whatever we needed to in that process. So that took probably two to 2.5 months of working through that process. And then ultimately we got flown out to LA to meet with everybody in person, which was the final step in the casting. So
were you cast on the trip to LA, or was there a phone call afterwards? Kind of take us through that initial reaction to learn that you've gone through this process and you're now a cast member.
Yeah, it's actually funny. When we got the invitation to fly out to LA, we thought we were cast on the show. We're like, oh, they're flying the cast out to the show to meet everybody in person. It's a formality. And when we got to LA, we realized that they actually flew out twice as many potential cast members as were going to be cast. And so we're like, oh, there's still a whole nother round here. And then, so we had to meet with so many different people in LA. And I think it was almost a full week after getting back to New York from LA, that we finally got the FaceTime call from our casting producer, Kayla, who was fantastic, telling us that we were cast on the show. And then we went out and had some celebratory drinks.
That's amazing, Joe. The show is it's about travel to exotic places, right? But when you really boil it down, it's about relationships, right?
100%.
Relationships that you have with your partner. You are a member of the LGBTQ community, right? Your relationship is on display for the world, right?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that and kind of what it meant to you and Ian to represent that community in a very public way.
Yeah, they told us that early on in the casting process, right? They said it on the surface, it may appear like this is a adventure travel show, competitive travel show, but at its core, it's a relationship analysis show, right? It's a study on exactly that. So we knew that during the casting process, and we're engaged. We're currently engaged. We were engaged when we were on the show, and I think that it was there's things that we went in wanting to get out of it relationship wise. Obviously, communicate better. That's always sort of been like our Achilles heel in the relationship. More so me than him. he would say if he was sitting right next to me. And then we know that we are each other's person, right? And then getting to do this experience together really just validated that and assured us that, if we can get on the show, if we can do the show, if we can put our relationship, through this crazy, wild, test really of stressful situations with cameras and all this craziness, then honestly, we could really, take anything on. And so that's sort of, we kept that in mind throughout the entire process, because there were difficult times for sure, stressful times where we were sort of at each other's throats a little bit when we were getting lost. But I think we came out of it just kind of now having that really special experience. And do we communicate with each other better? Maybe. Time will tell.
Yeah, it's funny. I want to dive into that a little bit because communication is important in any relationship, right?
Yeah.
I struggle with sharing with my wife when I'm going to be home after work, right? Or do I have an engagement after work? This is at a whole other level than just remembering to talk about schedule and talk about kind of the needs that you have. This is a whole different level, right? Yeah. What did you alluded to? Maybe you weren't the best communicator in the relationship. What did you learn along the way?
Yeah, I think I'm you in this scenario, Paul. I'm just I'm the one who can definitely refine the communication skills a little bit more than I have in our relationship. But I learned that it is absolutely. It's paramount. It's key, right? It sort of fuels every other aspect of relationship. It fuels trust. It fuels fun. It fuels everything, right? And so without that communication, you don't have all those other things that are great from a relationship. So, and listen, that was put to the test in the first 20 minutes of the race kicking off, right? We found ourselves trying to get from where the race started at the Hollywood sign in LA to, the first location that we were trying to get to. And I was tasked with being the navigator. Ian was tasked with being the driver, and communication right off the bat, right, was tested. And then we had to carry that through the whole time. But I learned that, we are greater than the sum of our parts when we're together. I think that's kind of the main thing that I took away from doing this experience with Ian and on the race. I've got the things that I'm good at and the things that I'm not, as does he, but put us together. And I think that we complement each other so well that we can take on these crazy obscure tasks and come out stronger, where a lot of other, people might come out a little bit more tattered.
I compare it to the preparation of an athlete, right? You think of football players that they go on the field and they practice and they hone their craft to be able to compete on the weekend. But the part that people don't see and don't realize is the amount of film work that they're doing, right? They're looking at their opponent's film, seeing what their tendencies might be. In essence, you and Ian did that by watching the first 32, 33 seasons of The Amazing Race during COVID. What kind of competitive advantage, if any, do you think that gave you?
Yeah, I think a lot, right? And a lot of the other teams probably did the same. I would guess, but I think that Ian and I, we come from different backgrounds. We have different skill sets. So, we really fill the gaps of where the other might fall short, versus other couples. And it's not just, right, it's any combination of two people, friends, mother, daughter, father, son, whatever it may be. We actually come together and really kind of create this full picture from a skill set and competitive advantage standpoint. Also, I have to say that, Ian, one of his special skills is the ability to just like navigate the crazy world of airlines and connections and just like knowing which airlines partner with other airlines and all of that stuff. There's a whole crazy world of all of that. And so being on the race and having to, quickly book a flight to Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam, or wherever in the world we had to go quickly and figure that out on the fly with a travel agent who, didn't really speak that much English. That was a huge competitive advantage that I think that we had coming into the race too. And then of course, we always opted to do the more physical challenges because comparatively we're on the more fit side of the cast, right? And so we thought that we'd be able to make up time. Little did we know that we would have to do these physical challenges on a crazy street in Vietnam and in 120% humidity and in high heat. We didn't factor in all of that stuff, but yeah, I think we came into the race with our own special set of skills that gave us a little bit of an edge.
I mentioned when we were off air that my wife and I are casual watchers of The Amazing Race. It's on in the house every week when we're doing some of our evening chores, and we will pay attention and we will say, "Wow, how could they make that mistake?" Right? I'm sure you and Ian, as you were watching those 30 plus seasons before to prepare, you probably had that moment on every episode that you watched. 100%. And then you became that person, right? Yeah. How much harder, was it a lot harder to actually be competing than, did you?
10 times harder, at least. 10 times
what's
harder.
That?
10 times harder, at least. No question. I mean, you're sitting on your couch at home. The contestants are trying to figure out a word scramble. You know it in 2 minutes, and you're screaming it.
Right.
When you're up on the rooftop, having just high wired across from one side of the roof to the other, and all of a sudden there's this giant billboard, and all these cameras start showing up, and the race only started 30 minutes ago, and you don't know what's going on. You're trying to adjust and acclimate. The excitement, your adrenaline. Yeah. It's different. It is different than being at home. It's so much harder. And yeah, on the physical side, at home, you don't really get a sense of how hot is it there? They're in Southeast Asia. It's hot. It's humid. The streets are chaotic. Yeah, we can carry something that's heavy, but with all of those other factors, it makes it a lot harder. And then, the environment around you also plays in. The camera person who's always with you is asking you questions, right? Because they're trying to craft a story, craft a narrative, for the viewers. And so you have to balance that out. You have to stay focused on the objective and the task at hand, but you also have to, field the questions and sort of articulate your thought process and articulate your strategy. And so balancing all of these different things at once, it makes even, the easiest tasks so much harder.
So, message to America: give the amazing race competitors some grace. It's a lot
Yes.
harder. It's a lot harder than sitting on your couch in a temperature regulated environment, right?
Exactly.
Joe, if you wouldn't mind, take us a little bit behind the scenes, because there are things that people, I guess, wonder when they're watching The Amazing Race that isn't always necessarily covered on the show. Like, what happens when race day is over? Do you then have to find your own hotel? Are accommodations provided? What are some of the behind the scenes logistics that people might be wondering about?
Yeah, sure. So it depends. When typically when a leg is over after we checked in with Phil on the mat, we then are taken to a holding area because we have to do our interviews. That's when it sort of cuts to a side by side. We're doing the task, but we're also telling the audience about the task. That interview is what we do after the leg is over. So we spend some time doing that, and then we get taken to a hotel typically. And it's going to be, it's going to be a nice hotel. It's going to be a decent hotel depending on where we are. But then there's other times when it just depends on when you get there. For example, we got, without giving too much away, we got to Vietnam was one of the legs on the race. Ian and I got there first. We actually got there like at night for the next morning's start. So we got to sleep in a hotel that was nearby that the production team put us up at. We don't have a means to pay for anything, right? We can't use any sort of personal means on the race whatsoever. And so other teams, they arrived to that location at 4 a.m, just because of the way that their travel worked out. And so they didn't get to go anywhere because they had a 6 a.m. start time for the next leg. And so it definitely depends on how you're doing. But in between the actual legs, there's food, you're taken care of. Unlike Survivor.
Yeah, I think you picked the right show to go on.
Yeah. There's other behind the scenes nuances too. Like oftentimes people wonder why, if Ian's the driver and I'm navigating, I'm actually sitting behind Ian when he's driving. Right. That's just because the camera person is in the front seat, and there's also a sound person who's sitting next to me. So there's always kind of a squad of 4 that's traveling around. And honestly, kudos to the production team and the camera person and the sound person, because, we're running around being crazy people. They're also running around chasing us, capturing us being crazy people with all of that heavy equipment. And so they're kind of doing the same thing that we are. You just don't see it. And so their job is really, really hard. And they do an amazing, fantastic job at it.
Joe, I mentioned that you are the industry principal at Dealpath. How did Dealpath deal with you being a competitor on The Amazing Race? Were they good about giving you time? Like, how does that work? I wonder how people get all of that time away from work to do things like this.
Yeah, for sure. I get that question a lot. Luckily for me, we have a pretty lenient, PTO policy. I think that's kind of relatively common across like the tech startup industry landscape. So that was helpful. And then, Dealpath just employs really, really good, understanding people. And so when I presented this opportunity to them, they are our CEO and my boss and everyone, they were like, yeah, this is a unique opportunity. There's no way you can pass something like this up. Tell us what we need to know to support what you were working on while you're gone. And then, go and do this thing and then come back after. And that's sort of how I positioned it. I was like, I would love to come back after and continue working on what I was working on. And thankfully they were really understanding. Of course, my CEO, Mike, tried to push some Dealpath hats and t-shirts onto the show a little bit. But that was quickly shut down by production.
That's funny. Some guerrilla marketing there.
Right.
when you think back on your experience, and I realize that we're only in episode 6 so far in this season, so from the first 6 episodes, what has been your favorite moment up to that date?
Of course, the starting line. We were all lined up at the Hollywood sign in LA, and that was it was so exciting because we were in LA for a couple of days before that, going through security and orientation and learning about what we need to know. So we were cooped up and so excited to get out there. And so being lined up, knowing that the race was going to kick off in, I don't know, an hour, 30 minutes, 10 minutes. We really didn't know. There were drones capturing everything. We were doing all these different takes. The level of excitement was just so through the roof for me that I'll never forget that. We saw all of our bags lined up in the distance that we were going to run to and grab, and then just like head off into the world somewhere that we didn't even know where we were going. Right. So that was one. And then another moment that was really special to me was a little later that same day, in day one of the race, after completing a task in LA, we ripped open the envelope. It was the first time that we kind of ripped open an envelope that had an international destination that we were going to. And that first destination was Bangkok, Thailand. And that is where Ian and I got engaged. We got engaged in Thailand. We did a big trip, probably 6 to 8 months before the race in Thailand, just coincidentally. And so seeing that as the first destination was like a really special moment, because it was already a special place for Ian and I. And now it's the first place that we're going to on this incredible, unique experience, which just like made it that much more special. It was like a really, really nice moment.
That's amazing. Some serendipity there.
Right.
To start off where you and Ian have started your engagement, which is
exactly
fantastic. I mentioned that the show is all about relationships. Did you and Ian have a favorite couple that you competed against?
We loved everyone on the cast, which is, of course, like my political answer, but it really, really is true. We're in this group chat with everybody and we talk all day, every day. It's super distracting, but it's so fun. We did get close to another team, Robin and Chelsea. They are both moms and they have such incredible stories about things that they've overcome and why they were doing the race together. And it was so moving and inspiring to hear their story and how they got to where they are. We felt really lucky to be able to spend some downtime with them in the airport to learn about all of that. And then from that moment on, like, yes, we had a little alliance with them going for sure, but they're just incredible people. But again, I say literally every team on the race in their own right. Some are just absolutely hilarious. Some are just so wholesome and nice. You have Rob and Corey, who are representing the deaf community. Corey's father, Rob, is. Right. And so that was just incredible to see. And just an amazing cast.
Joe, I know the season's not over yet, but can you talk a little bit about how this has changed your life? Shout out to Ian. We can see him in the mirror back there. So welcome to the people of Penn State, Ian.
Yeah, he's here. So as you can tell, we're still together. We're still getting married, and so nothing's changed on that front, thankfully. But yeah, I think like I said earlier, it's just, having done this with Ian, having completed this, going through the casting process, working through all of these crazy, unique problems and solving them in international destinations, but also doing it with our core ethos of adventure travel and learning about different cultures, which is exactly what the race sort of portrays, right? Like, let's showcase all of these different relationships, but let's also put them in these different unique cultures and showcase how beautiful all of these international cultures and people are to the world. And so being able to do that with him, we it validated everything that we kind of already knew, which was that we are each other's person. And then it sounds so cheesy and cliche, but there's nothing that we can't do when we're together, is sort of the mantra of coming out of the race.
That's amazing. This is the People of Penn State. I'm Paul Clifford. I'm joined by Joe Moskowitz. He's the industry principal at Dealpath and an amazing race competitor. Joe, we like to have a little bit of fun here at the end of People of Penn State. We call it our lightning round. We'll throw some quick hitter questions at you if you're up to that.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Your favorite class at Penn State?
Oh, good one. I did one of my entrance to major classes was a speech class, the individual speech class. And so I got to work on a really cool speech, and the New York Times came in at the end and they did a little speech competition. I did not win that, but I got to participate and it was really cool.
That's amazing. CAS 100, is that the? Yeah. CAS 100. What is your, beyond the amazing race, okay, favorite TV show?
Oh, favorite TV show. I mean, Survivor.
Survivor. Okay.
Trying to get on.
That's amazing. If you could have dinner with anyone, or you and Ian could have dinner with any other couple, who would it be and why?
Well, if I could have dinner with anyone, it would probably be my grandfather on my dad's side, who, passed when I was young, so I didn't really get to speak to him that much, especially not as an adult. And he was a survivor of the Holocaust, and he was Jewish in Poland and Germany, and got out of there. So the things that he overcame and the things that he saw and experienced, I can't even imagine, right? And so I would just love to have a conversation to learn about how he overcame all of those hardships and challenges. If it were the two of us, we'd probably want to get dinner with the Obamas.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That you're not the first to choose the Obamas as well.
Oh, really?
They are actually frequent dinner guests of People of Penn State podcast.
I love it. Yeah, I remember when Barack came to campus and gave a speech. That was really it was incredible.
What has been your most unusual "We Are" moment? Either you were somewhere and you saw someone wearing Penn State and you yelled out "We Are," or someone saw you wearing Penn State gear and they shouted "We Are" to you. Yeah,
I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it in remote Indonesia. I've seen it in Iceland. There's always a Penn State shirt or a Penn State hat being worn, and it doesn't matter what country you're in, you're getting that "We Are." It's just, you're getting it and you're going to respond to it. That's just the rule, and everybody abides by it. But I will say a fun thing about living in Manhattan is when it happens across the subway platform while a train's going by, you try to get that "We Are" before the train goes by. That's always really fun.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a new one on the podcast. That's fantastic. Yeah. I'm assuming Ian is not a Penn Stater. Does he understand?
We'll say "We Are" before I do, and you're correct.
Oh, okay. All right.
He's not a Penn Stater, no. But he will be the first one to say "We Are." He'll notice it, yell it, which is amazing.
It's funny. It's hard to explain that, or it's hard to explain Penn State to people who didn't kind of live it.
Right. But he gets it. But then I also have to do the UC for Cincinnati whenever I see that. So
okay, all right.
It's give and take.
How about your favorite flavor of creamery ice cream?
Ooh, if I were to have creamery ice cream right now, it would do a number on my stomach. I'll tell you that. Mint Nittany.
Okay.
Love a good mint ice cream.
That's awesome. No, I want to thank you for joining us on the People of Penn State. It's when alumni like you allow us to share your stories to other alumni, it elevates the pride that we have and the value of the Penn State degree. And for that, we're truly grateful.
Paul, thank you so much for having me. It was really fun.
All right. Take care.
All right. See ya.
Thanks to our producer, Vince Longaro. If you like this episode, I hope that you will subscribe to the People of Penn State podcast in your favorite podcast app of choice. And while you're there, go ahead and give us a rating and drop us a review. Help us spread the word to fellow Penn Staters and share all the great stories that we are delivering here on the People of Penn State. If you're a member of the Penn State Alumni Association, thank you for your support. And if you're not yet a member, what are you waiting for? Go to our website at alumni.psu.edu, and you too can become a member of the world's largest alumni association. Thank you once again for tuning in and for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are